what is in it for the airlines? The consumers learned to do self-service. The consumers or the customers learned web check-in. So pre-COVID, the web check-in percentage used to be anywhere between 30 to 35%. During COVID, it touched almost 98%. And now...
is it staying at 98 or has come back?
So I was coming to that.
Okay.
So it was staying at 98, but now it is somewhere around 85, 88%.
That's quite healthy, actually.
That has helped us. So that has helped us big time.
I think the trend was already there, and certainly when I was at Qatar Airways prior to Swissport, we were seeing self-service rates up above 80%. But what I think you're seeing now with the examples that I've given is that the systems and the procedures are actually forcing the customers into self-service. So you're seeing the rates well above 98, 99%, especially for the customer that I just mentioned.
I think we use the 2 years that we had to try and digitize whatever we could. And when I say that, I'm not talking about really the front end, but really the small processes on ground, including training and learning. We went into e-learning in a big way. So we used that time because we had a lot of time on hand. I mean, for Sanjeev and Mr. Gupta, it was more about how the customers would return back. For us, it was how we would return back and try and see how we can use that time efficiently to learn new stuff. And we did a lot of work on that front, and happy to be out on the other side of COVID and work with those processes, bring in more efficiencies, reduce costs, hopefully pass that on to some of our domestic friends and be able to make some business.
So even though we are very digitally focused and we are going to be able to maintain the kind of web check-in numbers that Indigo is used to or SpiceJet is used to, but at the end of the day, we do have to have the ability to cater to the first-time passenger because we are expecting quite a number of them. I mean, it's simple economics. You're opening up an airport close to a very thick catchment. Obviously, there is going to be first-time users, and those users might be those that actually for that first trip or maybe 1 or 2 trips requires that tender loving care for which Indian hospitality is well known for. So we do have to design an airport that accommodates this very new, this very upswing wave in digital check-in, but at the same time, we can't lose focus of actually what makes us special. And that is the ability to show our Indian warmth and hospitality. So absolutely, we'll be ready for both. Intention is to quickly turn those requiring TLC into very digitally apt passengers. But just given the depth of the catchment, we are going to have good use of both.
Nothing is permanent. And if it is cost effective today, we do this way. Tomorrow, if we get better offers from players like Celebi, we are absolutely open to look at outsourcing. It's all about cost.
So this is a dynamic environment. So my personal view is that, so in this kind of environment, we need to always reassess ourselves where we are and recalibrate. So maybe what has worked for us yesterday may not work today. What is working for today may not work tomorrow.
Right.
So it's a dynamic model, and we need to work with the time, and we need to be dynamic and pragmatic actually.
Right.
So at certain airports, we have outsourced where we thought that it is beneficial for us to outsource. And wherever we think we can optimize our cost, so we have insourced that.
So from our perspective, we, particularly during COVID, we saw airlines considering outsourcing on a much more accelerated basis. So in Australia, for example, with Swissport, Qantas chose to outsource their below-the-wing operations right across their Australian network. For them, and they report quite publicly that was financially very beneficial. So they saved north of 30% of their costs by outsourcing with Swissport and with some other providers. And the reason for that is quite simply that we're specialists. It's what we do it globally. We leverage the learnings and the best practices from the global network. We bring them into Australia and we apply them to get better efficiencies and a better quality product for the customer.
It's eventually about economics. What exactly is the end output in terms of its per flight cost? And we also believe we have a fair amount of ability to really work the real costs. And when we work the real cost, we put everything onto the basket. There are some unimplied and non-tangible stuff. I would say non-tangible for a reason because you can't put a cost to that. Like, for example, managing the human capital, the unions and everything else, the working capital benefits that we give, and especially during COVID and otherwise, that was a massive advantage to airlines that a ground handler like ours with reasonably deep pockets could sustain those kind of crises. But having said that, I think it is all about how we are able to come somewhere in a midpoint to be able to convince. Either you convince me or I convince you. And for that, it's very critical that we work as a partner and really do a very transparent and open desktop exercise to be able to put everything on the table. There are some stuff which we don't have control over, like you mentioned, royalty, GST. GST, you get input credits and all that kind of balances in some form, but royalty is something we as ground handling entities, as concessionaires have fought hard, appealed to the airport operators, some successfully, some not so successfully, some not at all successfully. So I confess that that has been a big challenge. And when I say this, I can say this now, there's no secret. We used to handle Indigo in Cochin. We had 30, 40 flights. I knew it was a short window. How long will he keep paying 45% royalty? And it's prohibitive. If he wants to do it on his own, that's cheaper than the royalty value itself. So we knew that's where it is going, but we've pushed the airports to come down to a reasonable level. I think that's one aspect is economics. Second is probably a lack of confidence, and I understand if an airline thinks, listen, I can't just give away my service quality indices to a ground handler. I need standardization. I need some element of transparency in how I'll be handled. I just hand this over tomorrow, you mess it up, and I have a huge impact.
I'll come to that. It's a very important point.
So that's one criticality. And third is, most critically, is to let go and try this out in a place, in a phased manner maybe. And most critically, we come to an economics part and then move forward. It should be a win-win partnership. And a ground handler can be a partner who you could go with in a large scale. We get embedded into your system. We work with you as an airline. So we literally become a shadow of the airline.
So, for us, what has really been very important is to be able to provide an airside design that actually instigates or supports this quick turnaround, which is absolutely critical for any of the airlines to be successful. So while we've been designing our airport, we've been working very, very closely with the key airlines, making sure that they're part of this design thinking and design functioning, because essentially that is what is going to propel growth at the airport, is how quickly can they turn around an aircraft. At the same time, we do understand the importance of safety on the airside, and our intention has always been to try and introduce, I say introduce because actually it's not done efficiently at any of the airports in India, is to try and introduce a pooling mechanism where the key components of any handling required on, let's say, a 320, which is the most common aircraft in India, those equipments could be pooled and then categorically as per schedule be sent out onto the apron. However, I will say that I don't think there is much traction in the idea of pooling, because obviously we need very strong airline partners to be aligned with our thought in order for this to actually prosper. And the questions that arise from the airline side are important questions.
There's another thing which we need to ensure, that our product is delivered what we want to deliver to a customer. Now here I'm coming back from cabin appearance perspective, like what kind of headrest cover we need to put in, which seat is kind of a differentiated product than the rest of the seats. So for a ground handler it becomes a challenging that every airline will have a different shaded product in cabin as well. So if you put together all together things, so as an airline we need to ensure that standardization is there, what we offer to our customer at every airport. So a ground handler may not be available at all the airports, and for us it will be much bigger cost that if we have to train all the ground handlers, all the employees at all the airports, that what is our product, how do you intend to deliver this product. So probably that's also another big challenge. So that is the reason in India if you see the ground handling, probably even if what we have outsourced is only below the wing, not beyond. But ground handling as a subject is a comprehensive subject.
The only reason more recently of which airlines are choosing to keep their own staff above the wing is largely because they see it intrinsic to their brand and they want their own people in contact directly facing with the customer. So we do see that view on occasion. But by and large, airlines now are accepting that you can have a quality third-party provider provide as good, if not better quality service than what they can do in-house. This is innovation and digitisation is obviously central to most organisations these days, but particularly to Swissport, and we have a very comprehensive strategy around it. So whether it's below the wing, we are seeing some rapid movements in technology, digitisation, and particularly the ESG or sustainability agenda. So, for example, within Swissport, our target by 2027 is to have north of 40% of all of our GSE to be electric. And the technology that is coming in from the providers and the suppliers of GSE is rapidly moving in this space. One of the key things for us is that the airport operator is providing infrastructure to make sure that we can actually support an electric fleet below the wing. You're seeing robotics automate things like bag rooms that were traditionally manual handling locations for staff. And then, of course, above the wing, you're seeing the technology with digitisation, with check-in, automation of boarding, and particularly biometrics revolutionising the customer experience.
We were, during COVID, and in fact, right after COVID, we invested in taxi bots. You spoke about that, your colleague spoke about that. That's a very expensive piece of equipment. With literally no customers on board, we took a leap of faith because we believe that has a future. It delivers 85% savings on jet fuel when it is taxiing, 15% left behind for the APU being functional. But those are the kind of measures we've taken. We brought 3 units. We've been engaging with IAI and TLD to be able to keep that active and alive till airlines really come on board. It's a no-brainer. Money is lying on the table to be taken.
So the requirement is going to be aligned absolutely with what the government has already initiated, where the government is encouraging for e-equipment. In our case, we would like 100% e-equipment on the airside. We are putting that same sort of stringent evaluation on ourselves as well, because even we will have our own e-vehicles, even when it comes to transportation of employees or passengers within, the airport premises. We would do the same.
I would call it a tale of two halves. Above the wing, or the passenger experience, I think we've seen a revolution in the last 10 to 20 years, where what was previously a very manual process, long queues for check-in, etc., has now become largely automated. And customers can, in most part, breeze through the airport without talking to anyone if they choose not to. Below the wing, however, it hasn't been so far. So below the wing still remains very heavily manually operated. The improvements in technology, we are going to see some things change. The robotics will change the baggage sortation systems and the loading of the bags into the containers. So we're already seeing that in certain airports around the globe. A lot of the equipment that we're seeing around the aircraft, the focus is more on sustainability, electric GSE, reducing the carbon emissions. But at this stage, we're going to continue to see, I think, a lot of human capital involved in the process.